Hi, welcome to this video on comping and extending chords. That was the blues in E that was in the first video, but now it's got comping with 3-note voicings. So the concept here is to build on your shell voicing, which have the 3rd and the 7th, for example this one, which is E7. And then, depending on where we're playing, we can add a 3rd voice. Now, if we look at the B string, which is just above the top voice here, that seems to be the logical place to get an extension from. So the note that's really cool and it's very easy to play is F sharp, which is the 9, called natural 9, in the scale which we call Mixolydian. Now, not everything comes from the blues scale. The Mixolydian scale sounds like this. If you look in the folder for this video, you'll find all sorts of interesting information, PDFs and recordings. The 9 is the 2nd note in the scale. So why is it called a 9 and not a 2? Well, chords are built in thirds. They're stacks, they're like little towers. That's the 1, 3, 5, 7 arpeggio. And if you want to go further, the next one is the 9. And the next one would be the 11, and then the 13. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes, but let's look at this 9 chord we've got. This chord is so common in fusion and soul, and of course blues also. It's important that we know it. And the other thing is the rhythmic component. I was sticking to a riff for this comping. It was always the same in the shuffle groove, which is triplets. Sometimes when you're comping, you can stick on a pattern like this because it suits the music. And other times comping can be more loose, where you're not fixed to a certain pattern. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So we've got to stay with our E7-9 voicing and just stay there. But here we can do a slide where we go up a half step and back down again. And when we go up to a half step, that can be seen as B7 flat 13. Here's the B, and that's our shell voicing, tritone. And then the added voice is a flat 13. It's just chromatic, the way it resolves. Then we continue with the E9 again. And this is called a sharp 9, also called the Hendrix chord. A sharp 9 is a very bluesy sound because that note is in the blues scale. Here's the blues scale. So you might say, well, why do we play the natural 9? Well, we're playing the natural 9 because it gives us a different sound. And it's interesting to have that contrast of the comping using a natural 9, but the soloist might be using a sharp 9. And you might say, well, doesn't that clash? Yes, it does clash, but it works because the chords are also played very short. There's a lot of space there, and it's also about the volume you play. If you're comping, you're not going to be the loudest person in the band, obviously. Your job as a comping instrument is to fit in with the rhythm section. In this case, it's bass and drums and the keyboard, and you don't want to be louder than them. If you follow this, it'll be okay for a soloist who is louder to play over your chords, as long as you're steady with it, meaning keeping to the pattern. In bar 5, our next chord is A13. Now, with the shell voicing, we just move down a half step to get our A7. And the available color or extension on the B string is F sharp. I mean, there are other colors available, but a flat 13, I don't think you'd want to play that. It doesn't sort of feel nice. You've got to support the soloist. And this sounds good. Or 13 is a mellow sound. It's also a color from the Mixolydian scale. So the 13 is like the 6, the natural 6. In this position, it's convenient to play it. That's what we're looking for also. We don't want to break our hands. And then we go back to E9 in bar 7 and 8. And then we've got a B13, A13, and E9 again. And now B7 flat 13. The flat 13, we've already used it. It's got a bluesy sound too because it's using a G. But comping is all about finding what we call voice leading. And in this case, it's the top note. It has to go somewhere, which means also that it may be, sometimes it'll stay on the same note for a while, because otherwise it would be a bit nervous. So we look at possibilities that we've got to make a smooth, logical melody on our top notes. And if you find a nice, comfortable thing like that, then use it. That's a good thing to know. So the other thing which we have to do also is look in other positions. The PDF only has one example. How do we find other positions? Well, obviously we have to find our tritone. And it can't be too high. If we play it up here, we'll have the option of playing the E string. So I could play a 13, but it's too high. It's going to get in the way. We have to play lower down. What about this one? Sometimes an open string is part of our shell voicing, just by chance. So D is an open string, and G sharp is on the first fret. So what's our extension then on the B string? Well, it's a 13. The question is, what do we do when we have to go to A7? Because we can't slide down. There is no open C sharp string. So that's the problem if we use this voicing. But it's still good to know it. You could transfer everything to another string group. String groups can be either 3 or 4 strings on adjacent strings. So far we've been playing on a 3-string group. That could be transferred to a lower string group, then you get this. It's quite low, but it still works. And the option, the extension, would be available on the G string. That would be a 13. Sounds good sometimes to play in a lower register rather than this. Okay, and A7, as always, we slide the tritone down. And our extension could be a B. It's nice. So we've got E7, 13, A7, 9. And back. You can do this. In bar 4, you see the example has an E7 sharp 9, and that's about our voice leading, maybe an opportunity to do something a little different. So here we also have the opportunity to go from the 13 to the flat 13. And then slides down a half step, and then we have a A7-9. That's really nice. It's just, I found it's a general rule when learning chords and stuff, look at how many voices you've got, and if they're on adjacent strings, that's a string group. And therefore, if you've got a 3-note chord on 3 adjacent strings, that means there's going to be 4 groups of 3 where you could play it. Now, whether or not it will sound good is another question, but let's just look at it. Now, this is where we started. This is E7-9. So another string group where that could be played is the top 3 strings. Same notes. I've purposely not written this down. I think we've got to train our ears. So if you're playing this, split the notes up so that you can hear the intervals. Da, da, da. It needs practice to hit those notes accurately, and I've been a bit lazy with singing in the last years, so maybe I should practice it again. Then we try to find the same notes on another string group. So the tritone, that'll help us find it, because the tritone is such a strong sound and it always has this appearance like that, except for here where it's a little different. 9 on top is a major third. Good. A lot of people never play down there. They're always playing up here and that's it. Well, I think you could expand your knowledge a little just looking for these shapes. So another option we'd have is to play it here. I think that's enough, because the other one, it's the same, isn't it? I don't think we'd really need that ever. So it's the same, meaning that the tritone is exactly the same appearance. I've never seen anyone comping up this high, except for bass players. Electric bass players, when I think of bass players playing chords, immediately I think of Jaco Pastorius. He used to do that. He played a 4-string Fender, so it was tuned the same as the 4 strings of the guitar. So he can play the same sort of chords that we can play there. He could do this. The other thing we need to look at is just other chords like A7. We found an alternative for that. Or you'll keep seeing the same shapes, because it's, you know how the guitar is, we just move things up and down. So that's what's happening here also with chord shapes. And then we've got the B7 with the flat 13, which becomes, that's a nice one, that's the sharp 9. You can practice with the backing track. I've given you one with the keyboard and one without the keyboard. Without the keyboard is probably more fun, because you can do your own variations. The remaining backing tracks that you'll find in the folder, I didn't want to go through every one of them. I think they're quite obvious. You know, if you have a blues in C, like Rory Gallagher played it, a slow blues, that it's very similar to the slow blues in B flat that B.B. King played, the same tempo also, 60 beats. There's, of course, different harmonic opportunities for us. Always remember that you have to play in the style. Blues can have different styles. As we can see, we've got the slow. We've even got a blues like Freddie King's, which is based on 16ths, as is also Crossroads by Cream, Eric Clapton. That is blues in A, again, not like Peter Green, it's based on 16ths. I didn't want to go through everything because I think you've got the idea. And if you do have questions, you can always contact me. See you in the next video.